Okay.
Just spilled on myself.
For the record.
Off to a great start.
Well, we're going to need a bigger boat.
Oh my god.
Because we have got right here on Naiad, we've got the Bernie Journey fam. We've got people who were in where'd we all go? Shout it out, everybody. Get on your mics.
All at once.
Nevada.
South Central LA. Iowa.
That California, Nevada, and Iowa?
LA.
All right, LA as well. Great. So I think another way of saying that is that everyone on this boat has, I think we can say, has gone the extra mile, has done the work, true heroes of the revolution, with the exception of Brian and Colin.
Thank you.
Everyone that's supposed to me and Colin will get extra free health care after Bernie wins.
Back to Seattle Sucks, a podcast about hating the city we love. We have a full boat, as Greg intimated, and we're going to introduce our crew now.
Yeah. We've got Colin's here, Brian's here.
Obviously, we're here.
Greg.
I mean, come on, man. That's not what we're talking about.
Okay. Let's go. Let's start right here. Tell us who you are and all the places you went for Bernie.
My name's Hannah, and I went to Nevada for Bernie.
My name's Olivia, and I went to Las Vegas and LA for Bernie.
Awesome.
Hey, my name's Munya. What's up? I went to Iowa and LA for Bernie.
Awesome.
My name's Justin. First time, long time. I went to...
You've been on
You're
the
a repeating
show.
guest. My
This
man.
is your second time.
Second
This is
time.
Justin's
The
second
people
time.
love
This is
you.
First time on the boat. First time on the
first
boat.
time on
Oh,
the
yeah,
boat.
that's
First
right.
time boater.
Wait,
long
wait.
time.
Justin, last time you were on the show, we were also involved in a medical quarantine as well. Because we were all sick, so we had to do the first ever Colin episode, as you recall.
That is true.
Yeah.
When
So
Justin was on,
he's
I
part
was
of quarantine part 2.
We might have
now.
had the coronavirus back then, by the way.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, almost 100%.
Actually, the last time Justin was on, I was calling in from the rental car in like a neighborhood in West Des Moines or some fucking place
Oh, wow,
in
I
the
didn't know
snow,
that.
like after a day of canvassing. Okay, right here.
Cool. This is Carolyn, and I was not able to make the journey for Bernie. I planned to go to California. I helped people get places.
That's
but
right.
My boss was like, no time off.
Yeah,
That's
Carolyn helped me.
So Carolyn, we know, spearheaded an effort to raise money on GoFundMe to send just a bunch of people. Not everyone could be here tonight, but
A caravan.
Carolyn was Carolyn was a leader of that effort. Raised a bunch of money, sent a bunch of people. We're going to talk more about that. And Justin, put in a lot of organizing for all this as well. Cool. That's the gang.
Woo!
Gang.
The Bernie Journey gang. Great. Yeah. This is. We don't. This is what is this? This is Sunday before the Washington primary.
Lil Super Tuesday.
Yeah. Duper Tuesday. So we it's a tied race. There's maybe in some ways some of us wanted this to be over on Super Tuesday, just a knockout blow. That's why I went to Iowa. That's why people were in Nevada and California. But you know what? We're gonna have to keep doing this. So that's fine, because you know what? In the end, it's fun. We like it. We like getting out there for the revolution, for Bernie, for Medicare for all. So yeah, we're gonna keep doing it. I mean, a bunch of people were out just knocking doors today. I went out there in Wallingford and Finney Ridge, because we got a primary coming up. Who knows? Maybe we'll have to go back out to other states. I don't know. But let's start. I don't think we need to go like too much into like the state of the race here. We know it. We're waiting for that inevitable Warren endorsement on the eve of Duper Tuesday.
Surely that would happen.
It's
Don't get
coming,
me started.
I said a lot of
Wait on
divisive, glib things in the last episode about Elizabeth Warren and her followers, but I'm sure that's all going to be sort of put to rest by the inevitable endorsement. And I look forward to Elizabeth Warren just going ham on Joe Biden the way she did on Bloomberg. That's going to be great. But let's put aside all that and let's reminisce about our time on the Bernie journey and talk about this as organizing and on what we've learned from this, what we've done, and what we're going to continue to do over the next couple of months. So, Carolyn, tell us about like this fundraising effort.
Yeah. So I just want to preface it with I don't know if anyone saw Zedjelani was like, y'all, organizing doesn't matter. It doesn't work. Look, Bernie organized. Look at all these Bernie journeyers. Didn't work. You didn't win Super Tuesday. And I do think that it is working and that it is a thing we have to continue to do.
Yeah.
And it's the only reason we've gotten this far. So
yeah, I mean that's the key there.
Yeah, anyone who doubts that I think they're wrong. So yeah, I think that the fundraising, I think the thing that was really helpful is just people being able to put a flag in the sand and being like, yep, we're going, and being able to tell people like, we can throw you $100, $200, $400, and you can go. That made the difference between people going or not going. And it also just created that momentum where people were like, oh, this is fun. I can go do this. And I think a lot of people had it on the tip of their minds as something they wanted to do. And sometimes it just takes a buddy just being like, yeah, let's go next weekend.
For sure.
So,
well, and I think, you had mentioned earlier that for employment reasons, right, you weren't able to go maybe on some of these trips that you might have wanted to go on, which is the spot like a lot of us were in, right? And, I think you showed that doesn't mean that you can't contribute, right? Raising money. I know so many people who, forget having never given money to campaign. They never voted before, like they'd never given money to campaign, who have like dumped money into Bernie, who donated money to send people places and stuff like that. And that gives them, what organizing is giving people a feeling of ownership over the campaign, right? Like they feel part of it and they become invested and they become Bernie bros, right? Brocialists for life.
Well, and also ownership, but also a structure.
Yeah.
Some of us, I had the time. I didn't have the money, but I had the time. So we also raised money, and another thanks out to everybody who sent money our way to send me out there for a couple of weeks. But that was the fact that I knew also that I was going out there with a bunch of other people, Seattle people I knew, that I. That because other people had organized, because I didn't do, aside from the fundraising for, send Greg to Iowa, I didn't do like the rest of the organizing. I was like, hey, I'm not going to put any effort into this. Someone else tell me where I'm going to live, who is out there, so the organizing is a big part of it. Justin, that you helped me a lot with my Bernie journey. All the information, the coordination, talk to us about that and, what that was all about.
I do have a Zoom call account, so that's the thing. I have. That helped.
It was essential.
I had a spreadsheet.
Yes, you did. There were spreadsheets.
I don't know. It's really like not that hard.
But reassuring. Spreadsheet, very reassuring. When I was like, oh, there's a
Yeah.
fucking spreadsheet related to the beds and couches.
yeah, once there's a spreadsheet, it's real. It's like,
Because
this is happening.
I'm like, okay, yeah, there's all this talk of like places to stay and people out there, and I'm like, motherfucker, I am 35 years old.
Yeah.
I am not bouncing from couch to fucking couch.
Yep.
I am going out there and staking a claim on a bed, or I'm not going at all. So
I mean, it also helped that our friends Cassidy and Melissa
Yeah.
hooked us up with a place to stay. That
Yeah.
made it a lot easier. Because when we were doing the Nevada Bernie journey, we didn't have that lined up, and so we had everybody coming on all these
So
different
you were
days.
just all staying at the circus or what?
Well, no. Some people stayed. No, Jana, who's not here, did stay at Circus
oh God.
one night.
Oh, I was joking.
what
That's
circus?
No. Somebody did stay there, but we ended up getting an Airbnb for the rest of the nights, and
That's good.
people were on couches. We had a Bernie bus come in full of random people who were traveling
From
around.
elsewhere. From
Yeah,
elsewhere.
yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, I mean that was the great because this was because this whole thing is based on organizing. There were places, there were resources for people to pool. Cassie and Melissa had this like mansion on the outside, hot couch on the inside place that was awesome, and Justin and I shared a room briefly there.
We have to go back.
We have to go back.
Yeah, we've got to go back to that house.
podcast.
To that house. You, me, and Carl, Crouton, the whole gang.
It's like a Joe Biden story now.
No, it is. Yeah, I mean, Justin and Carol, I mean, anything more to say on like the sort of structural organizational part of this?
I mean, always be organizing. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's the motto of 2020. Just do what you can, where you're at, what you can do when you got the time. And if you have a penchant for spreadsheets, the revolution fucking needs you.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
get on that Google sheet. And
So many Seattleites got so excited right now.
It's like,
no, seriously,
wait, I
like,
can be a part of this?
yeah, I mean, like, just being the person who's like, I'm making a spreadsheet now, that's helpful. I know it sounds
That's huge.
annoying, but it actually is helpful. And if your boss is like, nah, I don't want to approve your away time, you got to stay, then you can be like, I will be changing the color on cell B27 so that it's easier to read, and that will help Bernie 0.0005%. But
Yeah.
it's something.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'll just, jump in everybody else on like what, you guys went out there, but like what
So-
the organizing part of it meant to you and how it helped you get out there.
So actually, just to pander to the show, Justin being on this podcast was what sold me on making a
hell
burger.
we
yeah.
accept
Okay.
pandering.
It's true. It's true.
I get that Justin sold you on it, but what about me and Greg?
You too.
Somewhat.
It was very convincing though. I was like, oh, this is something I could actually do. So I'm like, I'm not a super organizer, right? I'm not a super soldier, but I
Yeah.
was like, maybe I can do this.
Oh, that's really awesome.
What I think
I heard that from other people about
wow.
Justin's testimony specifically on his Iowa trip, that it was inspiring to a lot of people.
Yeah, and
I was like rambling and half asleep on that episode, like
Yeah, can
saying like
testify.
random shit.
Yeah, I heard from a lot of people that the really incisive and important questions that Justin got were really important as well, and whoever asked them. Really good at the job. But it came to actual talk. I think the point you make though about like that, you didn't see yourself as an organizing super soldier or whatever right before, right? And I think that's an important point. We're so demobilized, right? That people, everything they know about politics and organizing, right, they now know from TV as opposed to real life, right? And they're like, oh, to be an organizer, I gotta carry the flag up to the top of the barricade and like plant it in front of the
Yeah, we did that.
the soldiers
Yeah,
or whatever.
that
right?
happened in Iowa.
And
True.
yeah, and the reality is that organizing gets done by like regular people all the time, doing regular stuff that actually, once you do it, isn't like super intimidating, right? You're going and talking to people, and people aren't generally monsters. Like, and they're sometimes all right.
I belong to an irregular unit, which is why I just go where I'm sent by the organizers.
Yeah.
Olivia Munya, jump in here. Like, how did your Bernie journey start? And like,
So I went to a DSA meeting after Iowa and like watching Iowa, and I was so pissed that it felt like it was rigged, or I don't know what was going on in Iowa, and I'm like, I'm so fucking mad, right? Am I allowed to cuss on here?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so, okay.
This is Clear Channel. Actually,
Yeah. NPR cut. They edited it
the
out on their
FCC
own,
is gonna.
Okay, cool. So I'm like, what do I do? So I went to a DSA meeting, and then Justin went up and talked about his trip to Iowa, and he's like, if you want to go to Nevada, like, let me know. And so I let him know. I'm like, I want to go. Get me there. And I'm a full-time like yoga Pilates instructor. I don't have money, but I have time. So my schedule's really flexible. And so Carolyn and Justin really helped getting me there, and I didn't really have to pay for much. So that was it was really awesome, and it inspired me to go to LA, and I'm gonna go to Philadelphia.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. I'm like not done. I'm going to every state I can go to.
That rules. That's awesome. Munya.
Yes. So my Bernie journey really started after the debate right before Iowa, when we kind of got into what the discourse is right now with the snake emojis.
Yes.
You were inspired by snake emojis to get out to Iowa.
More snake emojis.
So
guys.
I think
More
I
snake
think
emojis.
this is definitive. This is clear. This we've never had any other position on this podcast, but harassment works.
Only of Dan Savage and Katie Herzog. Everybody else, you don't harass.
Harassment inspires. You know, it's really not about who you're harassing. It's about everyone else who sees it happening and you know, wants to take up that wants to pick up that rifle.
Yeah, no, it was really funny because me and Rico, who couldn't make it tonight, but we were just like hand in hand with organizing going over to Iowa. But when we were just like watching the debate at a college pub, we didn't want to go to really the big DSA watch party that time. We just wanted something light. We ended up going to a watch party that was right next door to where the Warren watch party was in Seattle.
Oh.
And
And that was
Edit that out.
that was the debate where the night before the debate, Warren said that Bernie said that she couldn't run, you know, blah blah blah, and it just became clear to us that
this was gonna be a fight. And this was going to be
Yeah.
a fight that is going to happen on the ground. And we can't just stand by and spectate, because it was going to make us lose our minds watching this, right? And so we were like, at that point, a day later, we were like, we're going to book our plane tickets. We're going to figure this out. We didn't know where we were going to stay. Thankfully, Justin was there before, but we were like, let's just go on the ground and knock on doors. Like, we are so passionate about this, right? We donated to the campaign. Let's actually connect with voters and win this thing. And so that's what really, really mobilized us to go.
Can I just say I'm an avid watcher of the Bernie Sanders Twitch stream, and I literally saw you multiple times while watching the Twitch channel. I was like, God damn it.
top live donor.
Wait, like where? Like on the caucus night?
I literally saw Carl in the audience of a Bernie event in Iowa that I was watching on the Twitch stream from my apartment in Olympia, and I was like, oh my God.
Oh, that's awesome.
For
Yeah,
real?
Munya and I made the New York Times the other
We
day
did.
from being behind Bernie in the on the caucus night. I mean, we were in certain angles and certain networks. We were in the back in the feed.
My dad sent me. I didn't even really tell them that I was gonna be up there. I just said I'm gonna be maybe on TV. I'm gonna be behind Bernie, and he just like sends a picture of MSNBC, and it's just like my hair. You can see my hair,
Like just
right
behind Bernie's hair,
Bernie.
like
You can see like me and Greg and everyone, and it was hilarious.
You just know there's a guy in a basement somewhere tracking the photos of you and being like, all the people at Bernie's event are all the same people.
crisis actors.
False flag.
I was in the Anderson Cooper interview of Bernie.
Oh.
Whoa.
Yeah.
As
Yes.
Anderson Cooper.
And I saw Anderson Cooper in Nevada. Yeah.
Just like playing the slots.
No, he he was at the rally at UNLV.
Did he cast a shadow?
I will say he was more handsome in real life, and I was
Wow,
just like,
that
that's
is
not fair.
shit. That's fucking saying something.
It's like,
Jesus.
It's too much.
Wow. Whew.
But I think the media presence is a good topic to go on, because that's something that I actually didn't anticipate going to Iowa. Of course, it is a big media spectacle, but I thought it was just going to be, a lot of people, and there's only so many journalists I could cover. But literally, my first canvas that I went on,
This is wild.
This was pretty wild. My very first canvas that I went on, we met Rashida Tlaib, which I was not expecting at all.
Awesome.
And I was like, okay, cool. We got off to the man, and they were like, Rico's like, hey, we're gonna have a journalist just join us in this car packed with just like 5 Bernie guys, and
You're also there thinking like, man, I wish we brought shirts.
yeah, really. Oh man, I wish we're not sharing one shirt with 5 people.
But those callbacks to jokes that were off air.
It basically got basically got voluntold by Rico. He was like, so you're gonna just hang out with Munya for the canvas? Like, that's cool. I was like, yeah, sure. He's just like, you got some media guys. I didn't really have any media training, right? This was like I wasn't expecting any real like PR, but essentially my first canvas was knocking on doors in this Des Moines suburb while giving like a 2-hour interview one-on-one with this journalist from Burlington, Vermont. And yeah, he was recording me the whole time, and we were kind of talking back and forth, like context switching. I didn't expect to be as exhausted as it was by the end of it, but it was just like such a crazy experience. And then it got published, like my whole thing did, and it ran into like, it was a good, narrative.
And this, from whence came the toxic Bernie bro narrative.
Yeah. You can look that article up on the road with a toxic Bernie bro.
Well, I'm so glad, because we almost ran into that. I remember even like this really prominent New York Times journalist who covers Bernie came up to me and Carl, and I didn't even really realize it. And I'm just like, assuming the best. I'm just like, oh, awesome. Wow, New York Times, they want to talk to us. That's great. And
hi, Mr. Fromm.
Yeah, hello. Hi. Oh, Mr. Brooks. Wow. But
I met him in a cab. That little inside David Brooks joke.
But it was really, really crazy, because just going from nothing and going from basically no media training to kind of like learning how to kind of pick apart really what they're asking and whether something is coming in good faith or not, and responding in an appropriate way. Like there were questions that were usually framed, and Carl had this when MSNBC interviewed them too, right? We had like a lot of media interviewing us. What was really interesting was like you would hear open-ended questions, right? And those are usually people who are kind of coming at it from an either neutral or good faith position. But some would be like a question with an answer baked in there already, right? Like, do you think that Bernie Sanders right now is being too much appealing to white working class people? Why do you think that is, right? And like, and if you just like kind of just take that on the face value and just say, oh, like, well, maybe this is what, but really, like, you have to just reject the premise entirely, right? We are the largest multiracial, multi-generational coalition, and we have to keep on reinforcing that because they have narratives baked in. And so that was just like a really great and unexpected learning experience I had. Canvassing as well as just like talking to media, right? Because we eventually could have been quoted, like they took our names down and everything, and we did get quoted in some pieces, so representing the campaign.
Very cool. Yeah. No journalist ever asked to talk to me at any time.
That's probably a good thing.
I was there for 2 fucking weeks. It never happened. And yeah, for the record, it's probably a good thing. You're not wrong, Justin. Yeah.
I did lament about the Sonics and my hatred for Howard Schultz, and that got directly quoted in one of the articles that got posted about me, which I was just like, yes.
Hell yeah.
Yes. You killed it.
Yeah. Really getting your agenda out there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
Yeah,
Since 07.
I was amazed to see, so like, I never saw any of the footage that made of us on the stage with Max behind Bernie, but like, a photo from that night, like just last week, made the New York Times that Max saw in New York, and sent to us. Who knows? Maybe that photo, they'll just keep reprinting that for years.
That'll be great.
We'll be famous.
Look on. We said that we were the hot boys for Bernie by being selected to go up there. We got pushed out of a crowd. They were like, "Hey, you three."
Yeah.
You three, and then Greg walked forward, and they're like, "Whoa!"
Let's walk through it. A campaign communication staffer is walking around looking for hot people for Bernie. And they see me, my buddy Max, and Munya, and they're like, yeah, we might as well have all three of you, I guess, is what actually happened. So
By having Greg stand between him, it'll accentuate their hotness.
yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Tried to bring 2 beers on stage, didn't work. But
Someone was just fully ripping a fucking bong in that crowd.
Hell yeah.
this was not vapor. This was straight up like a blunt.
Like,
So someone
yeah, yeah,
brought out a Swisher Sweet and lit that shit up.
Yeah,
it was
like,
amazing.
Yeah.
So somebody's job was to guard the stage, and when you showed up like beers in hand, be like,
Double fisting.
you can't have the beers. Wait, hold on. Did they make you throw them away? Could you just chug them real quick?
We could chug them really quick. We could. I'm saying just theoretically.
Yeah,
we
no, that's-
put
no,
them on the ground, right?
That's a
But-
boss move. I love that Bernie's people are like, oh, you know what? You can chug those beers.
Right, they're just like, don't bring them on
You can't have
stage.
them on stage.
Do not
but-
double
but
fist
chug
on a
them.
live stream on Iowa where everyone's watching.
No, very
This game
much.
had fun a
The
while.
staffers on that were very concerned about like the timing and making sure there were enough people to fill the stage when it needed to be. They weren't concerned with much else. There was at no point like any like instruction. Actually, they're like, just be up there and be Bernie supporters, and yeah, it's kind of not hard. You just sort of like scream and cheer and jump when Nina comes on, and you know that's all you get. It's pretty basic. So cool. Okay, so let's just start talking about our favorite heartwarming or just absolutely wild stories from banging on doors.
I love door knocking stories.
Hannah, like what, tell us about or whatever about like the substance of your actual Bernie journey and like what it was all about.
So for the first couple days, we were kind of out canvassing in like West Las Vegas, I guess. So it was out like the nice part of the fancy part of Las Vegas. So a lot of if you've been to the suburbs of Las Vegas, a lot of like gated communities, a lot of like little security guards on golf courts, that kind of stuff. So at first it got a little bit disheartening because like you'd knock on some doors and then like the security people would get called because I got this feeling that like the richer the neighborhood was, the more afraid they were to open their doors, right? They'd like kind of peek out and be like,
A pour is out there.
so someone's at the door. They're not in they're not in a UPS uniform and they came to my door. The horror, right? We were in this kind of like apartment townhouse complex with like, we thought we were being really sneaking in because we saw an open gate, but it turned out it's open all the time, which was a big letdown, honestly, when we left.
Yeah, word.
Yeah. So we were kind of wandering around, and then this guy in a golf cart starts following us around, and he's like, "It's not illegal, but you should leave." And then I tried to get him to
Was
caucus
there a
for-
golf course nearby?
No, there wasn't actually.
This is a mode of transportation.
Yeah,
The
that's,
Vegas way.
yeah. So, but then I did some of the strip caucusing, or canvassing, not caucusing. But you were talking to casino workers on their way into the casinos, and talking to them, and really, Allie from DSA was the real hero there. The security guard was like trying to chase us out, and she was like handing out literature and still talking to people while he was like chasing us. But it was really good.
Yeah.
So, and that was like, I felt so good after that because it was the first couple days were kind of disheartening, right? But then you go out to talk to people who are, working incredibly hard every day. And pretty much every single one of them was like, too busy to talk, or they were like Bernie. So like they either couldn't vote or they were voting for Bernie for the most part.
Yeah, there's two things you can't do in a casino: count cards and canvass for Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, it turns out.
Yeah.
So
Well, and the key question, right, is always, is it illegal for me to do this? And then if the answer is no, just keep walking and keep doing it. But yeah, it takes like a certain amount of guts because sometimes you have security coming out. And,
it got me a lot more comfortable. Yeah, being
Yeah.
like, are you saying that I have to leave?
Yeah,
Or are you
yeah.
suggesting, right? So
Yeah,
I think-
there's a difference.
I think a lot of it is we're so socially conditioned to be like, it's rude to go talk to politics. It's about politics. It's rude to knock on someone's door.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you believe how vulgar it would be to put up a yard sign about politics?
Divisive.
It's it's terrible. Like how could you? So I think going out and canvassing, even here in Seattle for DSA for Bernie, has been really good because it helps break down those barriers and make you realize that politics is an integral part of our lives.
Oh yeah.
And that we need to engage with it. We can't just be like, oh, it's more important that we be polite than that we actually like create real change.
Oh yeah. I'd done a lot of canvassing over the years, but it had actually been a while until 2019 when I got in just a ton of doors and hours on the Sean Scott campaign, and so I felt like going into this, I was like, I have to put this to use because I'm trained up, I'm ready. I'm like any like there's no door that I cannot knock on in America.
Vet of the
I was like,
canvassing
I've got this like dialed in, like, just encouraging people to get out even on one. It can be a daunting thing until you do it the first time. Yeah. Olivia, tell us about where you went and some of your stories.
Okay, let's start with the scary story.
Oh yeah, let's hear it.
It was a dark and stormy night, much like tonight.
It was dark because Justin likes to canvas until like 9 p.m.
Sorry.
Hell yeah.
And he's like, no, we got 1 more hour. Come on, let's do this. I'm like, okay.
For the record, Brian kind of checked out, but Olivia hung around.
I hung in there.
Nice.
Brian's like, we're done at 6 p.m. I'm like, yeah, totally agree. And then Justin's like, no, we got to keep
Hell
going.
no.
I'm like, okay,
yeah.
fine.
Justin's like, that's not how we did it in Iowa.
It's really not.
You want to win this state by 40% or what?
It's really not. Yeah.
Yeah, so
And this was in Vegas.
yeah.
The rich white neighborhood in
It
Vegas.
was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
rich. It was the rich white neighborhood, and we're like, "This is a huge list. Like, let's all split up."
Oh, scary
It was
movie.
like
Let's
88
split up.
fucking doors. It was a gigantic list.
That's a big list.
So I knock on this person's door, and like 3 huge dogs are like barking, like it's like scary. So I'm just like, I throw the literature and I just run. I'm like, I can't do it.
The dogs like catch it in their mouth and just shred it.
It was basically like that. And so then I hear a person come outside and say, "Did you just ring my doorbell?" And I was hiding behind a car because I was so scared. And I come out and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm from the Bernie Sanders campaign." And he's like, "Oh, you got the wrong house."
Damn.
And
Because
I'm
I
like,
already voted for Bernie.
he was definitely like not
Yeah,
a Bernie
like
supporter.
Trump vibes?
Trump vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe a Joe Biden supporter, which we can use
Honestly-
this to cynically damage his
Yes.
campaign.
Yeah,
It was
like,
definitely
try
a
and
Joe
tell the
Biden
difference,
supporter.
right?
Yes.
Allegedly.
Who knows? But I'm just like, okay, thanks. Have a great night. And he's basically like, we don't like your kind around here. I don't remember. It wasn't that, but I don't remember what he said, but it was basically like that. And I'm just like, okay. And I called Justin and I'm like, Justin, I'm done. Like, I'm done. And then I canvassed with Justin for like 2 more hours along his side. Yeah.
Awesome. What was the Vegas Trump voter vibe for those who were in Vegas?
Actually, okay, so one Trump voter, we weren't even standing near his house. Like, we were in the driveway, and he was like, "Get out of here, you socialist." And we're like, "We're not even knocking on your door." And he's like, "I don't want you in my neighborhood." Trump 2020. But actually, to be fair, most Trump supporters in Nevada that I met were actually really nice.
Yeah.
But he was the only one that...
Yeah, they definitely
mean.
come in different flavors. Like I talked to a lot of nice Trump supporters in Iowa, and then there were some that had the Confederate flag up in their window. And when they answered the door, they weren't nice about it.
Yeah.
There are definitely some cranks. Like, I don't know if you were with me, Olivia, when we talked to this one dude that was like, well, I'm not going to vote, but I think Trump's doing a good job. And then he went on and on and on.
Oh, God. I wasn't there.
That
no.
might have been Brian, but
Did you end the conversation by being like, yes, you do not vote. Goodbye.
No, yeah, I did not want to encourage him to vote. I didn't tell him about early voting or the caucus. I just nodded my head a little bit and left when I could.
It's like, oh, that's good. They canceled voting this year.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I do kind of
Sorry
like
about
his mentality of like, things are going well for me. I'm just not going to rock the ship. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, not going to that poll, not doing anything. Just going to keep letting it ride. Very
I mean,
Vegas.
it's the American way, frankly.
Sure, yeah. Did anybody deploy the strategy that was joked about on Twitter a lot of getting a Trump supporter and being like, well, you know how much you hate Hillary? Guess who she hates more than Donald Trump? You want to stick it to Hillary? Go vote Bernie.
So true.
Did anybody deploy that?
Well, I did. I think we talked about that last podcast I was on, where you say, the Democrats would hate it if Bernie got the nomination.
Yeah.
But so one person said, jokingly said he was a Trump voter, and I took him seriously, and I would said, the Democrats, would hate it, if Bernie got the nomination. But then it turned out he was joking, so I kind of fucked that up. And, it might, I don't know, if you're good in social situations, maybe it would be good to deploy that, but I kind of wish I hadn't done it.
Talking
high
to
stakes move.
complete strangers, with a very defined purpose, is the only situation that I have social skills applicable to. I think I probably ought to tell the story, but the one guy who was sputtering mad, yelling at me, I told him as he shut the door that I had just turned him gay in the name of communism. Yeah.
I knew it.
I did have at least do the attempt of one of those, which is funny.
There should be an extra button you can hit on the app if you convince somebody to vote for Bernie because they hate Hillary.
There
right?
should. There should. We need
data we
we
need.
need data on there.
Yeah.
I don't know where the data would go.
You get a prize.
but-
That's how you get the good mug.
Directly to Hillary.
Yeah, right. To the inbox, to the private email server. But what was interesting is that usually when you're canvassing,
You're getting lists of people who are 19,
Yeah.
18, 20, 21, right? When you get those in the middle of nowhere in a random suburb in Iowa, chances are they're way the hell out of there already.
Oh, yeah.
And you are canvassing their parents in a suburban Iowa.
They moved to Germany.
right? Because
Allegedly.
the thing is you can see how many people on the list in a particular house there are. So there could be 3 people, which is
The kid and the parents, right? When it's only the kid, you can
It's
usually
just
bet.
one name and
One
it's
is
19
one
or
name and
20.
you see
Yeah.
It's not there.
19F for female, you're okay, yeah.
And
I'm
no
probably
reason
going to
to
be
think
canvassing.
them signing up for some Democratic candidate at some point corresponds in any way to their parents' politics.
Yeah, absolutely not. And that's usually the case. So when you do canvass those houses, you're probably going to run into their parents, and they're probably not going to have the same politics, if even probably opposite politics,
Yep.
completely.
Yep.
And that's what happened to me when I was in Newton, Iowa. I was canvassing
Newton.
this 19-year-old male, and he knocked on their door, and all I see is this this gray hair. He looked like a very prominent conservative commentator that almost a mirror image. Of course, it wasn't him, but I'm like, holy crap, this could be him. Just the typical suburban Republican vibe, right? Probably has a Bowflex in the basement. And he came up, and I see his wife look at me, just a black guy in Newton, Iowa, with a Bernie t-shirt on, and she's then she gets her husband to come through and open the door, and he immediately says, "Hey man, sorry, we voted for Trump, okay?
Should be
We're not
That was
interested."
2016, bud.
I get with it because
Yeah.
the crazy thing is that I was warned about this house. I was canvassing a house prior to this where he was a Vietnam vet. He was kind of disillusioned with politics, and we talked for a while. And I ended up just walking his dog with him around the block, and he eventually then just gave me intel on the whole neighborhood. He's like, "That house is a good house to hit." I didn't have an app, right? He was just nicely giving me intel. He's like, "But that 4th house down, they're hardcore Republicans. Do not hit that house, whatever you do."
You were like,
Special
challenge
note, hit that
accepted.
house.
My next house, sure enough,
Hell yeah.
was that house. So I was like,
So they're for Bernie now, right?
oh, totally. No, they're big time on the Bernie train. I just
Show them the light. But no, that's definitely not what happened. I tried that line. I was like, oh, hey, that's fine. But, it's really going to make Hillary mad if you vote for Bernie. And he just came back with me, and he just said, "I think we made her mad enough already."
Oh,
Shut the
wow. Wow. Okay, to be honest,
Honestly,
owned.
yeah.
Owned.
I
You
got
owned.
owned.
You got owned.
I
dude.
got-
Wow.
Body.
Oof. Wow.
Yeah, that's hey, good for that old
No,
man. So,
honestly.
so was the good house the guy pointed out a good house?
It
Was the intel good?
It was.
That's what I'm
The
asking.
intel
Yeah,
was
yeah.
good. It was
Yeah,
a lot of elderly.
Did you sign this guy with the intel up, like, to volunteer to, like,
He-
organize?
so
This guy
he-
sounds like
he
an
was-
organizer.
I guess so. I don't know. He was just really nice to me. He was really like hardcore. He identified as an independent. That's what you see a lot in Iowa, at least in my experience, is that people identified as independent, and whether that meant more libertarian or like truly just like I am not really into politics at all, or I don't think like either side works for me, which
Yeah.
is like a real thing, right? And
Well, I think what it means is the Iowa caucus is first, and everyone has to come and beg there, and they're like, "You're starting from zero with me,
Right.
buddy, because we're independents here."
Oh yeah. You're bell of the ball. in
Exactly,
Iowa. Yeah,
exactly.
for
But
sure.
no, he was a really nice guy, and I ended up talking to him. Initially, it was just like, I'm not into politics. None of the parties really work for me. They've never really done anything for me in like the 67 years that I've been alive. And I'm like,
Honestly,
fair.
accurate.
Honestly, yeah. So we did that dog walk, I eventually like gave him lit, and he was like, okay, I'll check him out, and I'll see if I could
Damn.
go canvas, right? And,
I mean, that's not. I mean, you just
caucus.
described
Nice
like a
job.
Bernie voter, right? Someone who's like, everything else in American politics is shit.
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a Bernie vote. It sounds like a Bernie voter.
You have
I
to
mean,
be on the ground and communicate you can't do it with sound bites, right? Like you have to
Yeah.
actually like really truly dig in
Well-
deep. It's hard work.
you can't do it with media sound bites or like earned coverage or sort of media catapult when you're Bernie Sanders, when you're actually trying to like tax the media corporations and possibly bring them up. Like, so yeah, I mean that's yeah, I mean to your point, what you were saying earlier, Carolyn, about because of Joe Biden's sort of the performance of his campaign in places where he didn't campaign, there was talk of the maybe just some disillusionment of the value of actual on the ground campaigning. And I think the actual the better understanding is that like there are many ways to win in American politics, and one of them is having a relentless media narrative on your side, having establishment signal to dejected, beaten down voters like what they're supposed to do, and the way to fight back against that is actually talking to people one-on-one. We have this we don't live in a democracy, but we have this like pageant that has sort of democratic forms that make people think it's a democracy. But the thing is that because of that, because it's so close to an actual, voting for president is so close to an actual democratic institution, that you can sort of pretend it is and game it as such. And that means you just don't get any help from the rest of the establishment or media. So that's why, we probably knocked on like thousands of doors today in Washington State, because that is the tool that is available. And I think we saw even in some of these states that Bernie didn't actually win on Super Tuesday. He still in a number of those places stayed within several points of Joe Biden, and it's that would be zero. That would be zero without the people knocking on doors.
Yeah. And I mean, if nobody knocks any doors, of course the right-wing candidate is going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, the left-wing, campaign is going to need to knock on more doors because, we're at a disadvantage. And this whole narrative that, like, knocking on doors or field doesn't matter, I think it's totally wrong because, I mean, if you look at us, if you follow any of our Twitter feeds or whatever, like, we got people to vote for Bernie that would not have voted. We got people to come out to caucus for Bernie that would not have caucused.
Well, I think
we have evidence
from like the media and establishment perspective, there is like a kernel of truth to like, oh, campaigning turns out it doesn't matter, because I think what put yourself in that position. What you're actually thinking when you look at this is, oh, we can go through this pageant, this process, nominate and then elect someone for president without going through this hassle. That is a possible scenario that we can carry out as an elite establishment without doing all this fucking, having the plebes knock on all the doors, not spending on, campaign staff and offices and stuff like that. But that's not an answer to the question, how do we actually, elect any good candidates anyone would actually want or do anything good for human beings in this country. So I think anytime you're listening to analysis of any of this stuff, you have to remember that like all of it it always has a perspective, and if it's just the like boilerplate like elite media perspective, it's not going to actually be useful advice to for left-wing activists.
Yeah, and I mean, part of that media narrative of that on the ground campaign didn't matter, understanding that is a demobilizing narrative, like, because it's working, that's why they're telling you it's not working.
Yeah, exactly.
And if I could take out my podcasting hat and put on my 20-gallon historian hat. But in the early decades of this country, right, it was considered gauche to campaign, right, because that'd be inciting the passions of the public and stuff. So what your campaigning was, you would send a series of carefully crafted letters, probably written by somebody else, to the electoral college representatives, stating your case of probably what money you would give them in kickbacks in exchange for their vote or whatever. And the initial hatred of Andrew Jackson had nothing to do with the fact that he had human skin saddlebags or anything like that. They were mad because he actually went out to people and was like, "Hey, you should vote for me, by the way."
Yeah.
And again, incited the passions of the public, which they hated. And I think elite opinion in this country has always hated that. They've always hated the idea of having to go ask the public for anything. Yeah, and they would prefer it if we just shut the fuck up and do our jobs.
You see a great disdain just among the elite media class for large crowds.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No matter who it is, they hate people, a large crowd of people gathered for a particular purpose.
Yeah.
And one-on-one organizing, when you go to someone's door, today I was canvassing in Capitol Hill and made my way into various apartment buildings by, calling people at the call box and getting them to buzz me in and stuff like that. It's very intimate. And it's kind of that gritty, interpersonal interaction that a lot of people go to so many lengths to avoid. Mm-hmm. It's uncomfortable. But the thing is, the status quo, the default option is what people defer to. And I honestly believe that's why Biden did so well. It's just people are like, default option, that's easy. I don't want to have to think about it. And I think to get any mass of people beyond that, we have to do that really intimate one-on-one work that it's scary and it feels weird when you first start doing it, but I don't think that there's really any other way to move people. And I think the phone calls and texting are great, but there's nothing like that interaction you have with a person at their door, at their home. I mean, it's profound. And it changes you. I heard someone said this at a DSA canvas event once. They were like, it will change you to go canvassing. And it's absolutely true. It does change you when you go through that process of knocking on people's doors. And yeah.
My maladroit social facility is so profound that I actually transcend any awkwardness that could possibly be had talking to a stranger on their doorstep. I'm just so far, I've gone around the horn and back again, so that I've never even been uncomfortable for a moment knocking on a door.
You're hovering above your body, that kind of experience?
I'm just I'm so awkward in normal conversation from day to day that this I'm on a different level talking to a stranger on their doorstep.
Were you a theater kid?
No, no, I was not.
But yeah, it's a point that's well taken that I think particularly following Occupy Wall Street and all that kind of stuff, there was, again, a media narrative that I think was pressed for a reason that, it's all online now, guys. It's all done on Facebook or whatever. And that's always been bullshit. Organizing is face-to-face. you're never gonna win using the tools that the capitalist class controls, right? You're never gonna use Facebook because Mark can always step in and just cut you off, right? You're never gonna win using Twitter. It's got to be face to face. That's the only thing we have control over, right?
Nothing against posting though.
No, always be posting. That's the thing. Make them shut down Twitter. Always.
If you're
be
not
posting.
canvassing, you should be posting.
Yeah, we should not be satisfied until Twitter's destroyed with an atom bomb because we posted so hard and they have no defense against it.
Canvassing, making those calls is about making those one-on-one connections with the actual mass of people. Posting is about getting in the heads of the fucking enemy, and I think the people on this boat have achieved both of those goals.
One thing I wanted to say, though, I think you have a really good point that what makes Bernie so special is that he's, I think, really one of the few candidates on landscape now that recognizes that it's not just, about having clever plans and making negotiations with the right people, and just coming to that kind of technocratic solution. He realizes all of us have to be organizers, that he's running to really be organizer in chief, that we need this mass movement of all of us, not just people on this boat, but all of us together, fighting together. And I think that's a really compelling vision. I think that's what gets people out to vote, and that's what we need to build a mass movement that can live beyond, to steal the slogan from DSA for Bernie, from a moment to a movement.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's I've actually been more involved in the DSA for Bernie canvassing than I have for
Downtown Seattle Association. Right?
Yeah. You know how much they love Bernie.
Yeah.
They love socialism.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Democratic Socialists of America. I was just canvassing in White Center. Closer today, and I think it's going to be critical to getting those policy achievements. It's going to take sustained organizing, sustained mass movement for a long time, and I think win or lose, the Bernie campaign is really bolstering that.
Yeah, and I think it's something that it's of anything maybe sets Bernie's campaign apart from everything else that's going on throughout this whole race. And it's something also, though, that people outside this movement try to wrap their heads around. When I'm talking to a hostile territory door knock, like a Biden or a Warren or a Pete person in Iowa, there's certain paths that I've gone down where you do end up talking about theory of change, and it's not something that's on people's radar because your Warren voter likes the idea that there are all these plans, and I'm sitting there. I don't necessarily say this, but I'm like, did you that there's this competent person who's going to have competent people and is going to have all these plans. I'm like, did you not live through the Obama administration? How do you think you get any of this done? It's something completely new. This idea that the movement you build in the campaign, this hasn't happened yet, but this is the stated goal anyway. And we should hold, if this happens, we should hold Bernie to it. But this idea that, that the campaign, the movement you build, the people you organize, the people you activate, that this continues on as part of the program. As the means to achieving anything, down to specific legislation. I mean, it's a new weird thing, and it does explain, as we're talking about, it explains at least part of the hostility to Bernie Sanders on the part of the establishment isn't necessarily because if it was just the big talk and the plans, your average Democrat, the idea of Medicare for all, your average Democrat could probably might see that and this is a path I saw for Elizabeth Warren back when her poll numbers were doing well before she hedged on Medicare for all. You can see a Democratic establishment going, great. If these plans, these policies we're talking about are working, are polling well, are bringing in voters, are going to win us the White House, great. Let's talk about whatever you want. Because when we get in there, we can pivot whatever the way we want for the general, and then once we're in power, we can then we have a lot of levers and a lot of cover to do or not do whatever we want. You know, we're still going to have the Republicans to blame for blocking us on these things that we maybe don't necessarily, as like a whole establishment, want to achieve. So I can see, you know, that was a real path for Elizabeth Warren, and it could even be, you know, for some hypothetical candidate who was like Bernie Sanders in every other way, but because he is drawing these crowds, because people are not just engaged but angry. I mean, we've seen how much people like absolutely are terrified and despise that anyone could actually give a shit about any of this stuff. That to me is the biggest difference. It's not even the plans. It's not the policies. It's that this willingness to activate working people, and then actually stating like that's the plan, to have these people just like riot in the streets if you won't pass Medicare for all, is the implication, and something I look forward to. That's the line that this campaign is crossing. You know.
Yeah, I mean, the Bernie Sanders campaign, their policies are about building power for the working class. For a lot of Democrats, the policies are about maintaining their power. So it's saying the right things and moving in the right direction, but inherently their policies aren't about building working class power. And that's what's so freaking scary about Bernie Sanders' possible administration to people in the establishment. And I would also just say the typical Democratic voter probably has a very bad grasp of power, period. Whether you're coming from the more PMC type of area or, you know, like, I'll admit I listen to Joe Rogan sometimes. Like, Joe Rogan is one of the most popular podcasters in America. He has no hold on what power is. All of his analysis totally lacks power analysis, which is why he's wrong about so many things. And I just think that that's something that's lacking in our consciousness. And if you've ever like worked on a union campaign or worked in a campaign where you won or had someone oppress you and you fought back, you suddenly have this understanding of power. And I just think that is what is so scary about Bernie, because his policies are actually about building power. And we can only get there by building power along the way, which is why organizing is at the center of it, because that's how you build power.
Yeah, and I mean, on your sort of Joe Rogan point, you know, every machine shop I've ever worked in, everybody listened to fucking Joe Rogan, right?
Hell yeah.
Like, and that's always made me laugh when people got so mad about the Joe Rogan thing. It's like, you do not understand the base that this guy has. But the thing is like their views, their personal views, mimicked a lot of Joe Rogan's views. Not necessarily the sexism or transphobia or whatever, right? But like the weird ephemeral understanding of like structure and how the world works, right? Like that it's just kind of like all out there, nothing, like everything's connected in a conspiratorial way, but not in a real way, much more in a TV show way. And the thing is that when you start to offer people like actual solutions to their problems, right, it's not hard to cut through that bullshit. You know, the reason you don't have health care is because the health care industry is turning a ton of profits denying it to you, right? Like that's something that people understand, just nobody has ever said it, explained it, or anything like that. You know, you'll probably be the first person in their lives that really like sat down and had this conversation with them about it. And you know, that's because of the weakness of the left in America, because of the media stranglehold on these things, and because of how alienated we've all become. You know, even to the point where people that do have those ideas, they feel so alone in them, right, that you know, they feel powerless, right? So I mean, even just going out and talking to people, doing what you guys were doing, right, you're assuring other people and yourselves, right, that you're not alone. Other people have this too, and that is the power of organizing as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people in the media establishment and, you know, general like liberal PMC like don't, when they hear "not me, us," probably hear it as a slogan that's maybe supposed to play against the like personality cult narrative, or that's supposed to just sound inclusive, but it's actually part of an analysis of power, and that and you can't really understand what that actually means unless you have that analysis. other stories. Who's got more stories?
Well, here's the thought. So we talked about going to the Trump households.
Oh yeah.
Let's hear about going to maybe people's thoughts
do it.
on Warren versus Biden
Okay.
versus Buttigieg
All right.
households. Which ones
Klobuchar.
were
Who's
better?
got a Klobuchar house story?
Who else does? Anyone have a Klobuchar story? Because I have a pretty funny one. It's brief, but it's
Yeah,
funny.
I mean statistically, like one makes sense.
Nobody in Nevada was voting for Klobuchar. I'll tell you that.
What was it, Amy Klobuchar when she answered the door? Was it her?
So this was when I was a precinct captain. So Bernie's campaign had volunteers in Iowa basically go out to every precinct. There's a lot of flaws with caucuses. One of the pros about caucuses is that you can see the results, right? The votes are not going to a back room. It's in a big gymnasium with a bunch of people, and you get to document the results too. So they wanted every single volunteer, no matter what. Paid staff, volunteer at every single precinct in Iowa. That's a hard thing to do. With Bernie staff, it could be done. I've heard rumors that Pete had all of his paid staff, which was a lot of staff in Iowa, at every single precinct, right? So I was at one where no paid staffer wanted to go. It was like 45 minutes out of Des Moines and like this, like, I won't even say a suburb. It was just like just community of people. It's kind of like the Leavenworth, but without the without the German marketing, I guess. And so it was a pretty large
They're celebrating a
gymnasium.
different era. Sorry, I can't help it.
So it was really interesting, right? And the caucuses, the way things go is that each single person who's representing a candidate gets to give a speech, and kind of pitch their candidate on why you should choose our candidate, and then people can switch over. Our precinct, 127 people came through, like more or less came through, which was fairly large, and 5 candidates were viable. So there were a lot of candidates viable in this race, right? And so 5 people got to give speeches. I gave my speech for Bernie. It was awesome. I was excited. But before I gave my speech, the first speech, right? And granted, this is a all white Iowan, like kind of, so a lot of parents coming through the typical what you'd kind of think in your head. The Amy supporter who gave a speech. This is the first speech. She said, "I consider myself a socialist. However,
Fuck, that rules. I'm so excited for this right now. Oh my god.
Damn.
We need a moderate candidate to clean things up in the White House because Donald Trump is just too much."
Oh, hell yeah, that's a
Some
winning
analysis right there.
argument. Do you ask her, isn't it sexist to send the woman to clean things up?
This was the first speech from just a
Yeah.
what you'd think of as just like a mom of maybe 3 who just looked like a Karen, talking about how she's a socialist yet supporting Amy Klobuchar because she directly wants a moderate in the White. I was like, okay, this is what we're working with right now. This is what I have to tailor my speech to.
I mean, in a
That's so
way,
good.
isn't that
So
like
good.
it's on some way? Doesn't that map to like a lot of the Democratic Party? People who think of themselves whatever their actual understanding is of the politics of this or an analysis of power, like who think of themselves as being on the left, as being progressive in some way. I mean, this is like the meat and potatoes of this fucking podcast. But who have been conditioned to think in purely meta terms about candidates and elections, to pretty much exclusively only think about voting as strategic, because of cycles for decades now, particularly after 2000. Yeah, I mean, that's, I guess it makes sense.
In a weird way, it does. And you know what? And to just top the story off, kind of like a good ending to the story, right? Like 5 candidates were viable. The only reason really why Bernie was viable, right? We had a ton of people come through, but there was this one family, a family of 4, who came through knowing nothing. I mean, like straight up, they were just like, I want to learn. I was like, okay, we're gonna learn. And a peace staffer saw that and jumped on that family, was just like working them for a good 20 minutes before the caucus happened.
Oh, yeah.
And they were still standing in the middle, right? And like the parents were kind of swaying either way. But I saw the kid who was there, and he was an 18-year-old, first time voting, did not know really anything about the candidates, and he was getting worked by this Pete staffer for like a solid 20 minutes.
Just like slowly turned off, like
I could see
Inching
just like,
towards
yeah,
Bernie
he was
with every
like
comment.
looking at the door, man, and I'm like, just came up, really simple pitch, because really pitching Bernie is pretty easy when you think about it.
you don't have to fucking triangulate.
No, you don't have to triangulate. You don't have to say these vague things. I said I support Bernie Sanders because right now I have over $24,000 in student debt, and Bernie supports abolishing student debt and making college free. That was my pitch, straight up, and he came to our side and made Bernie viable. If you
Hell yeah.
count the delegates in Iowa, that one delegate that we received was the reason why we can be recounting, and ultimately Bernie won Iowa, right? All of those organizing matters, even if it's just one person.
You got
coming
him
to
a
your
fable
side.
of the SDE, which I still don't know what that is. But you got him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
Who
I mean,
knows?
well, in that story, I mean, it has like two perfect encapsulations of America, right? In that one, the Amy supporter who says she's a socialist, and who knows what she means by that. But the fact that, like, most Americans, to your point earlier, legitimately have no fucking concept of, like, what political designations mean, like socialist, fascist, whatever, left, right, like they have no idea. They have some weird notion in their head, but it's not based on anything. It's just based on TV or something. And the other part of it too is that they have been conditioned to the idea of like, even if I do want good things, I'm not allowed to have them, and we can't have them, right? They've been conditioned to basically be like, I shouldn't expect things, I shouldn't want things. We just always have to kind of make the sacrifice play for the lesser of two evils.
There was this dire hardliner who was
he met some awesome characters in Iowa.
I know a lot
this
of
is why you
characters.
should canvas.
No,
is to meet
no,
these
like
people.
these are real people, man.
There's a Steyer hardliner who insisted that he was voting for Steyer because the deficit was just too much. After Steyer became not
Powerful
viable,
message.
extremely powerful, right? And he was like hostile about it. He was like super, super strong on like the deficit issue. I'm like, I don't know how this even played out.
When I
right?
fix my budget at home, that's always my favorite one.
Right.
And every Steyer, because Steyer wasn't viable in our precinct, and everyone, just dispersed all over the map. Someone to Joe, someone to Pete, someone to Amy, someone to Bernie, and someone to Warren. He stayed right at Steyer and said,
Yeah,
I'm dying on this hill. Nah, right here.
Steyer, dire.
Steyer,
so good.
But it's just like this. When I hear stories like this, I'm just like, not enough people have negotiated a contract. Like,
Yeah.
do you know how to negotiate a contract? You don't come in and say, well, I know where we'll end up, so let's just start there. It's like,
Yeah.
no.
Which is the democratic mindset, right?
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
Begin
Again,
with the compromise.
no
and work
power
from there.
analysis.
Well, I've got a theory about the Amy person. I mean, why is she a socialist? Probably because Bernie Sanders has finally ended McCarthyism. She is advocating for some basic social democratic shit that everybody understands and gets. And this, like, Democrat brain voter was probably like over the last 4 years is like, oh, Bernie Sanders stands for all the things I believe in. That must mean I'm a socialist. So we need to elect Amy Klobuchar because we have to defeat Trump. I mean, like...
To be fair, though, Klobuchar does look like she should be like the commissar of
Wow.
the upper Midwest.
Damn, that is
I mean,
extremely accurate.
If you're a Maoist, you might support Amy Klobuchar because, I mean, she might execute a landlord. I don't know.
Honestly, yeah. I mean, you would want her on your side.
Yeah.
And Amy with good politics, it's a dream.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, we have Bernie journeys. Amy had a long march of her own.
Well, there was this like somewhat famous and left-wing circles story that came out of the Communist Party press in like the 70s of this, Chinese communist apparatchik who was in this village. Long story short, he sat in a very uncomfortable chair and he had one nice chair, and he would let the workers, when they came to talk to him, sit in the nice chair. And the workers always be like, why don't you just sit in the nice chair? Like, we got you the nice chair, why don't you sit in it? And one day he sat in it and he's like, oh, and then 10 years later I realized I never got out of the nice chair, and I became corrupted by comfort. And I could definitely see Amy writing that story. I was corrupted by the comfort. I want my old wooden chair back. Straight back.
All right. Okay, so that was Amy and Steyer. Did anyone knock on a Yang Gang door?
Oh, go ahead.
I didn't knock on a Yang Gang door, but at the University of Las Vegas, it was really cool. It was a Bernie rally right before voting, and he marched everyone to the polls. So the line was a lot longer than we expected it to be, which was awesome. But there was this Yang Gang guy canvassing the line, and he had a camera. He was such hardcore Yang Gang, and he's like, yeah, he dropped out, but still vote for him. He's this is a movement. It's still important. I talked to him and I'm like, so you don't like Bernie? And he's just like, no. Well, he's okay. But his logic was really interesting to get into. I don't know.
So, and now that man tunes into Yang whenever he's on MSNBC or CNN or whichever one it is. Awesome. Okay, Pete. We got some Pete stories, Pete doors.
I know. I have a friend who converted from Pete to Sanders, and all I have to say is cool, dude.
Yeah.
My cousin actually got a guy. Well, he was a Pete volunteer who volunteered for his connections, I think, so he could get better Democratic Party connections.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Pete
Yeah,
volunteer.
sounds like a young
brand.
Pete.
Yeah. So my cousin, I actually took him. I took him out canvassing for his first time, and he's actually pretty involved in Democratic politics in Nevada. But he was like a Bernie precinct rep or whatever, and I guess kind of cozied up. I don't know if they were friends before, but the Pete guy. And took him out for drinks, and I think the guy ended up realizing hey, Bernie's the way forward. So
right on, hell yeah.
Don't give up on the Pete people.
Yeah, my precinct in Iowa that I captained for Bernie we've talked about this. We went for Pete, and it was all really wealthy suburb white people with absolutely dead eyes, and nothing interesting to say. Okay. Biden stories. Biden voter stories. Has anyone knocked on the door
in
Biden?
Nevada? So in Iowa, there were no Biden voters.
Never met one.
In Nevada, there were, Biden people or people who were either Biden or Bernie, which is weird. There was one door.
Just like the old guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Jana, who's not here, but she's a Spanish speaker, and so we were knocking doors in East Las Vegas, which is primarily a Latinx community. And so she would kind of, if there was, only Spanish speakers at the door, she would talk, and then I would kind of back her up if needed be. But we talked to this 85-year-old dude, and he was, she was talking to him in Spanish, and then he would be looking at me, which was kind of weird, but talking to her until we got. But eventually, he was talking to us for 10 minutes, but eventually, and we got nowhere with him. But eventually, his son came out, and his son was a Biden or Bernie voter.
Okay.
And we didn't totally unpack that, but by the end of the conversation, we did pitch him to vote for Bernie, and he signed a commit to early vote in place.
Yeah. Hey.
Card for
Nice.
us, and so we got his vote.
Yeah, I mean that's the good news about where we are at right now is that the field has coalesced around a candidate anyone only cares about by default. It's extremely beatable. No one gives a shit. Everyone most people who voted for him just felt like they got the signal to and don't really care. Biden is extremely beatable.
Yeah. Well, and it's a reminder too. I mean, your story just as a reminder too that in America for a lot of reasons, like people's political beliefs are like not particularly deep or well thought out, but it also means they're not particularly coherent either. Yeah. So you shouldn't just be intimidated away by somebody. Like work them a little bit.
Yeah.
See how deep their conviction is.
Peel it away.
Yeah. Scratch the surface a little, because sometimes people it's the thing they just saw on TV. This Biden guy seems viable.
That's exactly 100% of Biden support right now. I mean, I never talked to a single Biden supporter anywhere in the world in any capacity until after Super Tuesday here in Seattle. And so, I mean, that's just people going, oh, I guess Biden's the guy. And so if they have a reason why, it's because, well, we have to beat Trump. And if they're willing to listen to reason at all, that is a pretty easy case to break down, because that motherfucker will lose.
Oh yeah.
I mean, at this point, we should just be appealing to people's, strong desire to be cool. Supporting Bernie is objectively cooler than being a Biden supporter, which may have the blowback effect of some people are intimidated by cool people. So I don't know, but it's a thing.
Well, Bernie, it's a strong no nerds campaign. Cool people only. Yeah. But you're totally right, and I think that the thing to push on at this point too is, Biden's Social Security should be pointed. But the other thing too is like, you need to stress to people, he's not gonna fucking win. His brain is melting. Like, I don't think people have seen it because they don't follow it and they don't care, and that's honestly the right position to have. But like pointing out, like, come on, guys, like. He can't remember Obama's name. It's like 4 times now. This is insane.
But did you see the next debate is not going to be like a actual debate? Like it's a sit down thing.
Oh yeah, because my parents are like 100%.
There's dinner.
Fireside chat.
Yeah, because my dad is like
chat.
slipping in. My dad's in his 70s and is like also slipping into dementia, which makes him probably a Biden voter. And I just been talking to my mom and being like, I brought that up earlier today. I was like, they literally had to change the debate rules for him. That's how like unfit he is at this point. Like that's how bad it is.
My only thing is Americans freaking love the underdog, which is why I believe Bernie was able to come back from having his heart attack, because people were like, he's got it. And so I'm just worried if we're really like pushing the brain melt scenario with Biden, people are going to be like, he can do it. And then I don't know, like I think Americans like just love that when someone's on the brink and they're like, they're the comeback kid. It's just that narrative is so strong.
But also after Super Tuesday, now Bernie is the comeback.
Yeah.
He's the comeback kid.
Now he's Rocky. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a seesaw between
Wait, is he Rocky? I
from
thought
now
he
to
didn't
the
have brain damage.
Yeah, which one's Rocky? I don't know.
But and I mean the Biden. I mean, just nobody's a hardcore Biden fan. Like, so we just gotta we gotta scratch on it. We gotta push on it. We gotta harass. That's no. The thing to push on it a little. Yeah.
The thing I noticed in common in Nevada with the Biden voters was their like deepest conviction was that we can't have nice things.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
That he's the best alternative because we could never do these things like have universal health care, right? And it's just they're so beaten down that they're just like, well, we could never have a good thing. And I think that's actually the hardest thing to get through to people in this election or just in general is that we can't have nice things. We can afford all these wars. We can afford healthcare. It's okay. It's okay to want to have nice things for this country.
Or I heard a lot like, I had to pay off my student debt, or my kids paid off their student debt, and I helped them a little bit, but they mostly did it themselves, and so I just think that's not fair to them if now that college is free and student debt is forgiven.
One word, COVID-19. Like, look, the governors of 2 states are now like, the healthcare has to be free for the flu, and they just did it, and it's amazing. Look, we can do Medicare for all. We can just will it into existence because that's what governments do.
And it is important to like hammer on these sort of events as they happen, right? It's been a very unfortunate thing for the Democratic Party that they're running on a like no health coverage for anybody in the middle of an epidemic. And it's so funny. I got one like centrist so mad online with me. they just started yelling about how like there's no connection between like healthcare, public health, and like disease outbreaks.
Wait, so you're a Bernie bro? Like online?
Yeah.
One of those.
I was harassing somebody in the name of Brother Bernard, and this guy just kept getting mad at me and just being like, "Oh, prove to me there's a connection between like people having access to healthcare and the spread of disease." And his key point was that hospitals actually kill people because if you're to look at deaths in China of COVID-19, a disproportionate amount of them are in hospitals.
Damn.
And I was like, well, shit, you got me there, bud. Hospitals cause heart attacks. Hospitals cause, like all sorts of deaths, apparently. But, yeah.
Thank you for that story, Brian. Actually, we're focusing on IRL contact with the mass of the people.
Yeah.
So, does anyone have...
Wait. Twitter's not real life.
Okay. The Warren door. Iowa Warren voters, Justin?
I didn't talk to any Iowa Warren voters. I saw in Nevada there were people, when I was knocking doors, there was like a Warren canvasser just ahead of me. So I would see the Warren, door hangers.
You would just see them there.
Yeah, I would see them. And I would put my Bernie, door hangers over them. And on one occasion, the person left the Warren door hanger there, and then I knocked the door and I canvassed the house, and I got them to vote for Bernie with the Warren, door hangers still on their door. So
Perfect.
Hell yeah.
Perfect.
Should be like, oh, it's good to recycle and hand it to him.
Anybody else Warren doors?
Well, in LA, I don't think I got any in Las Vegas, any Warren doors at all. But in LA, I did. And it's just kind of hard to get them to go to Bernie because we're kind of told not to like rock the boat too much with Warren supporters.
That's weird. I've heard the opposite from the entire media.
So Warren supporters usually are just like, well, she's the female version of Bernie, and we need a female as president right now. And it's just like, okay, but like Bernie's the best to beat Trump, and they're like, well, we'll see. Like they're like before Super Tuesday, I feel like they were like still like she can win, like we can do this, but yeah.
And I mean that's hard. That considering all the other like sort of mystified and bamboozled sort of thinking about American politics and power that we're talking about, hard to really hold it against the Warren voter to want to cast their Super Tuesday ballot for their preferred candidate, outside of the sort of like game theory we were all doing about the actual correct thing to do. But I just today knocked on a bunch of ex-Warren doors, and I think every single one of them was for Bernie. If they were for Warren first, they were for Bernie. Some of them were, they were like, yeah, I'm probably leaning to Bernie. So I took time with those people and like tried to leave with them feeling really good about it. But I think like, at least. And it was a lot of doors I knocked on today were Warren people, and I think that makes sense for Seattle, right? Like, but I mean, for the most part, like, people seem to echo what you would think, which is that they, whatever the ups and downs of the primary has been, they did at least see everyone I talked to feel like that it was Bernie who was on the same page on policy, so.
When I think most, like, because we've seen like a ton of like Warren supporters come over, and I think like a good chunk of them are going to do that. It's a few psychotic holdouts who are just making a lot of noise, I think, of the Warren crowd.
So yeah, I think at this point the people who are still for Warren, it was a small number at on Super Tuesday, like, are, I mean, if you're for Warren, it's because you are on some level paying attention. You're probably like a professional, you read some paper or some site, or you watch some cable news or something, and you think of yourself as being on top of things. I think you do know the broad differences in policy. You do know if you're a Warren. A lot of people don't know that Biden is not for Medicare for all. The Warren voters know that. A lot of people voting have no idea what the Green New Deal is. The Warren voters absolutely do, and they know that Joe Biden is not going to do that, and that Bernie is. So, I think at the end of the day, like it's a pretty easy switch.
I didn't have the Warren supporters that I knocked on in Iowa. I didn't have any in LA. I mean, I'd love to talk about my LA experience a little later, but really, like with Warren supporters, it was really in Seattle where I've gotten a lot of them. And there was one kind of profound, I don't want to say too profound, but I knocked on a door, and again, it was the pesky 19-year-old door who, happened to not be home and was actually in college. And
19-year-old, stay home.
Yeah.
Stay home. It's important.
So their mom answered the door, and I was like, hey, is this guy here? She was like, she looked at my T-shirt immediately and was like, yeah, my son is really, really into Bernie. I, however, have some issues. It's like,
you're like, that's what I'm here for.
There we go. There we go. And she said, I'm not interested.
Too cool.
I'm not interested, and like pretended to like shut the door.
Sure.
But then when I just kind of stayed there, she didn't. And then
Whoa, you called her bluff,
There you
dude.
go.
She
Boss
wanted
move.
you to just like hang your shoulders and turn away as she was closing the door, and you caught her out.
I did.
Bloodless.
Nice.
Absolutely bloodless.
and she was like, you know what? Your campaign needs some empathy. You know that?
Okay, damn.
You almost just closed the door in my face. Talking about empathy, please.
So-
Talk about empathy. I mean, now, okay, I want to hear this. I want to hear what you laid on her.
Yeah, so your campaign needs empathy. Your campaign, you know what? Warren mounted a really good campaign. And honestly, she was the right person for the job. And now I'm just not sure. And I was like, oh, okay. You know what? Warren did run a good campaign. She was my second choice. Like, I do really appreciate what she brought to the table with her campaign, right? And I was saying, like, I do support Bernie for various reasons, especially because we believe in a lot of the same things. So when you look at right now, we're in a race between Biden and Bernie. I think the choice is pretty clear where we have to put our energy to if we do actually believe in the things that we're saying in the campaign, right? And then she was like, yeah, I get that, but you guys, right? 'Cause it was me and one other person. She was like, you guys have just been pretty mean and nasty these last couple days.
Hell yeah.
And then, no, this is the kicker. She was like, I appreciate Bernie having this class analysis. I get that, and I understand that. But, and she looks
Now we're getting
directly.
your actual problem, by the way.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But she looks directly at me. This is a white woman. She is someone who looks like exactly like Warren's demo, looking at a young black man and saying, but I don't really see Bernie doing much for the African American community.
Yes!
Oh my
Oh,
God.
I mean, like
That rules. That's so good.
I love the voters who you can just peer right behind their eyes and see the television, like you can see into their brain and know like they just have like MSNBC brain, like they're just parroting, like they have nothing else.
Well, like what
but
show they just watched.
to parrot like
just
the
hearing it
most
back,
like
yeah.
memorable
Hardball with Chris
boilerplate
Matthews.
talking points. Yeah, what?
I really want these stories that you're telling. Like, did y'all ever read Chicken Soup for the whatever soul? Like, I want Chicken
Yes.
Soup for the Bernie soul. I just want these like door knocking stories, just like so I can like finish a chapter and be like, yes, perfect.
Yes.
I feel
my
so
God.
warm inside.
I would read that.
I would read it
day.
every night.
Yeah.
It'd be like Bernie,
I
love you.
trust that means you'll all be recommending to every Bernie person you know to listen to what has just been the all-time easily most wholesome episode of Seattle Sucks that has ever been recorded.
The subject of whether something is human feces or dog feces didn't even
It
come up.
literally didn't even come up. We didn't discuss the flavor or smell of any excrement either. I mean, wow. We haven't even mentioned yet who the mayor endorsed. Yeah, like this has been really wholesome and heartwarming, and I hope encouraging. Maybe Justin, give us a quick pitch on getting out there for Bernie here in Seattle over the next couple of days. And well, okay, hang on, this is going to come out tomorrow night, so it's really just going to be Tuesday. So about future Bernie journeys and what that's going to mean. Like, what are we thinking about? And Carolyn, are we still raising money? Or
Hell yeah.
so what are the states? Where are we trying to send people?
So people are going to Philly. People are going to New York. People are going to
Damn, don't they got people in fucking New York?
not like Brooklyn, elsewhere.
Got it.
Wait, is there another part of
My
New York?
people are from Buffalo. Maybe I should go there.
Like
Never been.
Yeah, man. I think there's one other place people are going. Someone chime in. I think there was another place, but we have a spreadsheet for that.
There's still
So,
a spreadsheet.
There's a very active spreadsheet.
So if you're out there thinking, gosh, I would like to, when I have my grandchild sitting on my knee many years from now, and he says, "Granddad, what did you do in the great political revolution?" And you want to be able to say that you took a Bernie journey. We will put something in the notes of how you can get in touch with these brave organizers and make that journey and bring this in, because the nice thing about this primary process is because it's stretched out over several months. We don't all have to concentrate in our hometowns for the day. We can just sort of roam around and like go where the need is. So yeah.
Can I make a local pitch?
Yeah.
Well, one second. Can you tell us where to donate since you're raising
Oh
money?
yeah. I think we'll put it in the link. It's just it's a GoFundMe. I felt so sleazy starting a GoFundMe, but now I'm like, wow, the internet is magical. You can just raise money. And I think maybe we should make like a Gmail account. It might be a short-lived Gmail account, but I will forever check it into my 60s. I'll be like, did anyone email me today? So yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, the local pitch. The thing I've been doing, the past day or two, I've been in kind of a haze, is just wandering around my neighborhood, finding any house with a Bernie yard sign and just knocking that door. Of course, doing like get out the vote, make sure they voted, but then just being like, hey, what's up? Because, that person, if Bernie wins or loses, that person is probably going to be down to help out in some other struggle, some other election, some other organizing thing.
Damn, that's
so
some guerrilla organizing.
get to know people around you, and the Bernie sign is a great way to bond with them.
Wow, damn, that is
Justin
that
is the MVP.
Some inspiring shit. Wow.
I just want to make a note. I talked a lot about just my funny experiences in Iowa and in Seattle, predominantly white places. But what really kind of hit home for me and what reminded me on why we actually do this, and when we talk about bringing working people into this movement, the idea of working people really hit home for me when I was in South Central LA. And I was just on vacation, right? Like, I wasn't even supposed to be canvassing, but I just took a day out to canvass and just dished my girlfriend and canvassed. And it was great. It's great practice. But what was super interesting was that with the hard conversations, the funny conversations you have with, people around, like, predominantly white areas, when I went to Latinx and Black communities who were working communities, all of them were straight up on board. It was a completely different experience.
Same.
Mostly, none of them have voted before. Some had undocumented families. Like, some of the kids were only able to vote. Some were just like Spanish speaking only. I had to leverage my high school Spanish, right? Like, when we talk about bringing and expanding the electoral, this is what we're talking about, right? Like, this is the base that we're trying to mobilize, and these are the policies that really are gonna predominantly affect when we talk about abolishing ICE. Like, they have a living day-to-day fear of doing that. This is not a intellectual exercise, and so it just was insanely clarifying to me that like this is who we're fighting for, and like they are all on board, and they just have to get that activation and like a push.
Yeah, same. Every time I went to more predominantly black or Hispanic neighborhood, same thing. They were all for Bernie, like all for Bernie.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is that if you're a white person talking to Munya, it's basically a bit he's doing, and he's going to make fun of you later. Hannah, did you have anything to add about encouraging people to get out there?
Yeah, I think do it. I think it can sound kind of intimidating, right? But it's not that hard. The first time I canvassed for John Grant, actually, in the primary. And, I didn't have any training or a partner or anything. They're just, like, sneak into some apartment buildings. And actually, you know what? That part of it, I think, doesn't get enough play. It's kind of fun. You get to pretend to be James Bond, hold a door, sneak in. Because it's important stuff. And, I think the more you canvass, the more you realize that this movement we're in. This is everyone. It appeals to everyone, but especially to, working people. Like, when I was the most exciting canvas I did was actually here in Seattle, in South Seattle, like heavily immigrant neighborhood, and pretty much every door I knocked on, they're like, Bernie, yes, it wasn't up till I got to like the like expensive houses with all the signs where it was like, oh, I'm a Warren voter for what how do you feel about filibuster reform? Because like the movement we have, we're talking about fundamental issues that affect everyone's lives, right? Who cares about filibuster reform? I'm gonna be honest, I don't care. Like I care
That's
about
what the movement's for.
Yeah, we have a movement we're gonna make people's lives better. That's gonna change so many more lives than filibusters.
Yeah. Well, gang, everybody, friends, comrades, thank you so much for coming down to the boat and being on the show. And of course, thank you for all the work. The good vibes are flowing here. So yeah, thanks again, everybody. And of course, we'll have links and stuff. Colin.
Yeah, nothing else to add, but thank you. Thanks for being on the boat. Thanks for putting in the work. And for everybody else, go vote. If you haven't voted, make sure you vote. Get your ballot in the mail. Get it in a Dropbox. Go vote.
If you're not registered yet, that's fine. You can still go in person.
Day of, yeah.
Go down to the Chinook building downtown, and it's simple. It's easy. You can register and vote right there.
Yeah. Also, make sure that you mark Republican or Democrat. Make sure you mark Democrat on the thing because they've already thrown out 10,000 votes.
More than that.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So make sure you check that, and also check the show notes for where to donate for people who are going out and doing their own Bernie journeys if you can't do it yourself.
All right. Yeah. Thanks again for listening. We will catch you later.
Bye, everybody. Bye. Say bye,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Go Bernie.